Chapter 3 Gem Goblin. Ah, the Shark-Mouth Mountains. Phil spun around, arms outstretched. This is the main source of Samasla's magic gems, my friend. There's no better place to start our search. Goal hustled past him, leaping between stones. Hurry up! The Cistern's got guards patrolling mining towns all around here. Gotta protect their interests, right? Phil awkwardly scrambled up the rocky foothill behind her, meeting Goal on a dirt path. Thanks for waiting, buddy. He noticed the dwarf orc was crouched behind a boulder. Shh! Look over there. She nodded at a small wooden building. I'll bet anything that's a guard outpost. In front of it was a husky man with his head in his hands. Phil sprung out of hiding and began to console the crying man. After a flabbergasted moment, Gold joined the tiefling. The frazzled prospector bawled, You gotta help! You just gotta! Nobody in town can stop this gem goblin. It's big and it's taken all our gemstones. We're gonna lose our mines. We're gonna lose our jobs. Samasla's already pulled back guards because we can't pay our taxes. You both look monstrously strong. Whoop 'em quick, and you'll be living heavy on the howlite. Heavy on the howlite. Rural slang denoting prosperity. Originates from magic gemstone mining where howlite is valuable. Goblins. Goblins are savage, greedy, and weak. These small humanoids attack in packs to repel intruders from their dank lairs. They obtain most of their resources through theft. Having explained the situation, grief settled into impatience as the prospector waited for a response. Before long, he began nervously readjusting the rope and other climbing gear haphazardly strapped to his back. Behind him was a messy one-man outpost. It sat at the foot of a line of mountains, large enough to swallow the skyline. To the southeast, Samasla's city walls were a blip in the distance. Gold crossed her arms and tapped one foot. Sounds too good to be true. A single fat goblin for a pile of gems? Phil roped his arm around Goal and pulled her aside. These people are in trouble. We've got to help. They'll love us if we succeed. They'll bury us if we fail, snorted back Goal. Come on. These people are practically kissing goblins. Are you sure we heard the same thing? The Shark-Mouth Mountains got that name for a reason. Phil's head tilted to the side. Don't you want an entire town in your debt? An entire town, huh? A town known for its gems, you say? Her foot tapping grew feverish. Well, I didn't say it, but sure. Aren't you looking for some rare stone or something? The tiefling crossed his arms. Yes, I am. Not to sell, mind you. Then we have a mutual but divergent interest. Goal clapped her hands together and turned to the prospector. Sir, we'll take your quest and your hiking gear. The man cleaned off his tear-stained cheeks with a look of bemusement. In a flash, his pack was in Goal's hand. And what do you call this town again? Actinop, squeezed out the man, as his possessions were purloined. Phil unfolded a map. So where's this town of yours? Up here, maybe? The prospector grunted. It'd just be quicker to show you. He walked around a boulder and pointed down into a crater. It sat like a cavity in the mouth of the mountain range. Shark-Mouth Mountain's sharp teeth pointed up all around the crater, making it seem shallow by comparison. Mining tunnels dotted the crater's surface. At the bottom was the rustic town of Actinop. The basic stone and wooden houses looked filthy even at a distance. He continued. Payment will be left at the pub if you succeed. When we succeed, corrected Phil helpfully, removing a glove. He reached out his red hand to seal the deal with a handshake. Upon seeing that red skin approach him, the man stepped backwards. Won't be sealing a deal with a devil today. He hurried away, tripping occasionally as he descended into the crater. "Still convinced these people are worth helping?" asked Goal. "This is a perfect opportunity to change their bigoted little hearts. Once we're done, I'll mark my map to show Actonop as the town where tiefling prejudice started to crumble." The hike was grueling. The mountains shot up at sharp edges, ending in cold steel peaks that weather failed to dull. The two drove the prospectors' pythons into solid stone and wrapped them in rope to assist their ascension along the rudimentary paths. How about levitating now?" wheezed out Goal. Phil shook his head. "I can't carry myself, and this crooked terrain is also a problem." "Can't you do something? Like, you're some kind of magician now, right?" A warlock, actually." Goal pulled herself onto a narrow rocky ledge. And how's that different?" "My magic comes from a greater power." "Oh, like a paladin or a cleric or something like that." "No, they only deal with gods. Gods have thousands of followers. Warlocks are some of the few people willing to buddy up with small freaks from the outer film. I think the guy I deal with is called, what was it again? The Seating One. Seating One, that's it. Yeah. A fiend focused on chairs? Well, you're not doing yourself any favors linking up with a demon. People already mistake tieflings for demon spawn." For the record, a warlock is defined as someone who gains magic powers through a pact with an otherworldly being. "Didn't I tell you back in Samasla? This wasn't by choice. My book here's the blame." He lifted a damp, leather-bound tome from his shoulder bag. A trickle of sludgy liquid ran down his arm as he showed it off. "Since I'm stuck here, I'll use the spells inside to tear down tiefling prejudice and make everybody buddy-buddy." Phil took Goal's hand and strained to pull her up. He stared in horror as residue from his gloves caused her to slip from his grasp. The dwarf orc plummeted downwards, her red hair pushed to one side by air pressure. To the tiefling's surprise, she met his panicked expression with a face brimming with resentment. Helping Hicks is hardly worth the effort." She reached out a hand, snagging a python they'd placed earlier. The action loosened the rope, which fell alongside her. "Burglar reflexes are working against me. Can't help swiping something even when my life's in danger." Tossing away the metal spike allowed her to grab the loose rope. The soles of her shoes screamed as she pressed against the rock wall. But a burglar's also got to know how to do some second-story work. A powerful kick was enough to convert her downward momentum into an upward arc. She swung on the rope until her husky body shot skyward. Bounding between boulders, she returned to find Phil flipping through his spellbook. "I can see why that tome is in its own bag. One touch and you were too grimy to grip." Phil stuffed the book back in his shoulder bag and ran across the unstable ground with arms outstretched. "Cole, you're safe!" She sidestepped the hug, causing the warlock to teeter over the edge. Goal grabbed his collar and pushed him back onto stable footing. "Nice try, but you can't fool me. I saw you studying your spellbook." Phil's joyful relief gave way to defensive frustration. "I was looking for a healing spell. After a spill like that, I figured you'd need it." "So you've got no healing either." The dwarf orc returned his frustrated tone with interest. "What sort of spells do you have in there?" "Well, I can set alarms, move small objects, conjure up sounds, give people headaches, create little illusions, identify magic objects, and speak with nearby minds." Goal leaned to avoid falling gravel and retorted, "No flight? No big magic blasts? None of that? Nothing? Anything?" Phil raved, nearly losing his footing. My disc can carry... My disc can carry 300 pounds, but the ground's too steep here. A thought struck the warlock like a falling rock at that very moment. Oh! I can shoot energy out of my hands! But it does a number on my glove, so I try to avoid it. Dangerous magic should be used sparingly. He shook a finger at his dwarf orc companion. Sighing, Goal trudged onwards. Hours of travel brought them nearly halfway up the mountain. Staring upward, the duo noticed a hole in the side of a sharp incline. Staring upward, the duo noticed a hole in the side of the sharp incline. Several minutes of cursing and grunting later, Phil and Goal flopped into the mine. They panted for a while before observing their surroundings. The walls were dotted with nicks and gashes. Most appeared to be made by shovels and mattocks. A few larger slanted marks cut unnaturally across the smaller indents. The walls were lined with unlit lamps. Burnt-out wicks sat inside metal skeletons. Didn't even snuff the lights, huh? Miners must have left in a real hurry. Goal ripped the lantern off the wall and spun it around in her hand. This'll probably clean up nice, she said to herself. Awful dreary in here, huh? Phil said, trembling in the chilly dampness. Goal searched her bags. I'm not going to bother asking about magical lights. She produced a knobby tree branch, some cloth, a small box, and a flask of lamp oil. And I'm not going to bother asking where you got that stuff. Phil watched as she wrapped the branch in oil-soaked cloth. The dwarf orc then opened the box, pulling out shards of stone and steel. She struck them against each other to produce sparks. After a few attempts, the cloth caught fire. Goal raised the torch, illuminating Phil's smug face. She wore a surly expression in response. What? Behold! Phil grabbed the torch and waved a hand with a dramatic flourish. The flames flickered, changing into a stunning maroon color. He strutted around Goal. And that's the least of my powers. I can magnify my voice, open distant doors, and, if you'd believe it, stop bleeding. Well, stop people from bleeding. Goal let out an unimpressed snort and started down the mine shaft. Soon the dwarf orc noticed that her light source wasn't keeping pace. She turned around to see the warlock running the flame along his hairless chin. Sometimes I forget that tieflings don't get burns. Nice and toasty. Yes. Tripping on uneven ground, Phil was broken out of his daze. Don't be insensitive now. That's another tiefling prejudice that I need to dispel. We can get burns. It just takes a higher temperature. Paying him no heed and paying no attention to him, Goal marched forward, searching the walls for gemstones and only finding more gashes. Eventually, the cavern opened up to a circular hub. Tunnels shot out in 3 directions. Gem shards littered the floor, but Goal was disappointed to find the area stripped of all other valuables. Phil thought aloud, posing a question into the empty chamber. Do you think did that Actonop villager mention where exactly this goblin was? We should abandon this shift show. Goal turned towards the exit. A shift show is a colloquialism in Samasla, and it's born from Scarlet Stone commissioned plays. They often went horribly wrong due to their length demanding actors work and sleep in shifts. Before long, the Scarlet Stone family ceased putting on these plays. However, the saying still exists into the modern day. That prospector's probably having the laugh of his life right now. Can't believe I let myself get wound up by your talk of jewels. You were the one blinded by jewels. I just wanted to show these country folk that our races aren't so monstrous. Phil pointed an accusatory finger at the dwarf orc. If you're going to be a tiefling saver, try not being so. An abrupt tremor brought the conversation to an end. Dirt erupted from below them, sending Phil and Goal in different directions. The dwarf orc flipped out of the way, landing on her feet a short distance from the spot she stood previously. Phil, on the other hand, was hurled back before scrambling off the floor. A black spike, the length of a cow's leg, split the earth. It stabbed upwards, pulling a bloated body behind it. From nose to tail, the beast was nearly twice as tall as the tiefling, and several times wider. Its tan, seal-like body overflowed with undulating fat, and was held up by 6 shiny black spikes. The tail ended in a similar spike that bristled with barbs. Long, fleshy whiskers wobbled on the sides of its snout. It turned beady eyes towards both adventurers and made aggressive yipping sounds. Damn bumpkins, that's no goblin. Goal slowly removed 2 blades, one from her waist and one from her hip. But it is my ticket to a payday. The dwarf orc dove towards the thrashing beast, blade bouncing off its spines. Rolling, she raised her sword to cut into its tan flank. She pulled the blade, slicing one of the 6 spines until it was severed. Gasping from the effort, she wiped sweat from her brow using her sleeve. As the arm moved away, Gold's vision was filled by an incoming jet-black spike. The side of this spike caught her in the torso with enough force to whip her body across the small room. Her short flight stopped when her back slammed into the cave wall. Phil racked his mind for useful magic. Memory failing, he pulled a book from his shoulder bag. The thick tome was bound in pale, lumpy leather. Its damp corners were stained with black liquid. Phil frantically flipped through the pages, searching for something to jog his memory. His face lit up with a sudden flash of inspiration. Don't you dare hurt my friend, you gem gobbler! Phil's incisors clamped down on the glove, covering his right hand. With a dramatic jerk of his head, the glove flew off, revealing red fingers. Obsidian energy crackled along his fingertips as he chanted. Thrusting his right palm forward, he fired a bolt of dark energy. The attack glanced off of one of the creature's eyes and continued towards a rock wall. It collided, sending small stones to shower Goal. The dwarf orc expressed her sarcastic gratitude while rising to her feet. Thanks a ton. She observed the singed spot that formerly housed one of the monster's beady eyes. Finally, some useful magic, but we're gonna need something even bigger. Phil grinned nervously, his tail involuntarily coiling around one leg. That's the most damage I can do! Sudden as a bolt from the blue, ice rained inside the cave. A cone of chilling wind caused frost to form on the gobbler's back. In the next moment, an armored figure landed on the creature's back. Her Morningstar crashed into its icy hide. The monster wailed in pain as ice cracked and fell off, taking strips of flesh with it. Craning its neck, it attempted to bite the dragonborn on its back. The creature's efforts were stopped by a sharp pain in its head. Phil recited an incantation. He finished a series of hand motions by thrusting both palms in front of him. His full focus was dedicated to administering a migraine. Feet a blur, Goal closed the distance between herself and the tan creature. An upward slash with her left hand severed one of its whiskers. Her second sword dug into its blubbery body. The gem gobbler thrashed wildly, throwing itself against the walls in an effort to dislodge the dwarf orc. To its dismay, a series of stabs brought Goal closer to the back of its neck. Takal removed her shield and gripped the Morningstar in 2 hands. She landed a skull-shattering blow, knocking the creature on its side. Goal finished with a precise sword stroke, severing the head. Phil leaned against the beast, chest swelling to match his swollen ego. Impressive teamwork, wouldn't you say? Stepping out from behind the corpse, Takal extended a hand. Her 3 fingers met Phil's 4. Tiefling, the Golden Father Tiefling, the Golden Father smiles on your resolve. That beast was beyond you, but you persisted. Well met. I am Takal, Paladin of Oromut. Oromut is the god of righteous metallic dragons. He is often depicted as a yellow or gold serpentine dragon. He grants his followers crushing strength and restorative magic, and wars with Tialaga over control of dragonkind. Phil clapped together his hands. Phil clapped together his hands before throwing them to either side. That was nothing! Before long, the whole drop world will see that tieflings can be heroes. Everyone will know the kindness of philanthropy the tiefling. He added casually, "Oh, and it's filled to friends." In response, Takal mused, "I've met tieflings during my time in the church. Some lived meekly, repenting the sins of their ancestors. Others justified wrongdoings by blaming their birth." She snorted. "A convenient excuse for criminals and heathens unwilling to mend their ways. But you are an unusual one." Phil took this as a compliment and gave a small curtsy. Takal continued, "Instead, you remind me of the innocent, righteous, and selfless souls who were always the first to suffer. This was unfortunately common during my upbringing." "Must have been a rough place to live," Phil consoled. Where was it?" "I'd rather forget about it," replied Takal, turning her snout towards the cave wall. "Don't be so difficult," said Phil, closing his eyes. He focused on Takal and reached into her mind. He saw a silver dragonborn stealing and scrounging to survive in the slums of Samasla. "Don't you worry. I've lived in the bee too." Phil opened his eyes to find clawed fingers around his throat. Takal spoke with deathly seriousness. "My thoughts are my own. Don't dare probe them again." She released the tiefling. "You are well-intentioned, if overly curious. Temper your compassion with good judgment, and you may become a great aid to justice." She shot an icy glance at the dwarf orc, who was busy scooping up gem shards. "You may be too trusting for your own good." "Oh, that's Goal. She's great fun. How about you join us?" Phil flashed a goofy grin. Something in his naivete melted the silver dragon's icy heart. "Fine," said Takal. "I will join you. Together we will strike down evil so the righteous may rise up unimpeded." "Oh, joy," said Goal, rolling her hazel eyes.